Sam, the gentleman we're about to speak with made some pretty significant broadcasting history right about this time 45 years ago.
Wow.
On September 7th, story time, on September 7th, 1979, seated at an oversized desk in an undersized studio, George Grande signed on for the show, some show called SportsCenter at some place called ESPN, and the world hasn't been the same since. So we thought maybe he could offer us some of that same broadcasting mojo or juju for, our little broadcast here, little Dead Red Cincinnati, right?
I've been smiling about it since you told me he was going to come on because there's one thing that he says to me, and I can't wait to hear it. And I'm not going to say it because it's going to be, I know he won't let me down, but I can't wait to see this gorgeous man.
So, George Grande, would you be so kind as to bless our little broadcast in the same way you have blessed so many broadcasts before, as we say welcome in for the first time to Dead Red Cincinnati? There he is.
I love your music. Nice music, guys.
First class, man. First class.
Sudden Sam, you could have had that in the clubhouse, for one of your victories.
I know it. Hey, and I couldn't be more pumped. If that's my intro music or your intro music, I'm pumped up and I'm ready to play ball. Man, it is good to see you, sir.
We should have some video of some of those dances you did.
Oh, no. This show wouldn't last very long, I promise.
All right, George.
We could have had Casey's. Casey's was pretty good.
Quick update. How's life? You told me you fished over the weekend. All well on the East Coast?
Oh, everything's great. Kids are great. Grandkids are great. Yeah, we went. My 12-year-old grandson caught a 27-inch striper. So on his first cast, and that's pretty good. I told him this doesn't happen like this all the time. You could sit out there for hours and get nothing. But kids are good. Grandkids are good. Friends are great. Work I'm doing with the USA Baseball is a lot of fun. We got some great people. I just talked to Mike Socia. He's going to be our U12 coach. And he's got Dave Wallace is his pitching coach, Rick Eckstein. We got a great bunch of guys. Latrell Hawkins, nobody better than that, right, Sam? What a leader he is. So we got a great bunch of guys. We do the Olympics, and we're going to be in the Olympics in 28 in LA. We do the WBC. So a lot of fun, a lot of good people. So it's all good. It's all good. I miss you guys. I miss you two guys. I miss Chris and Jesse and Strick in the booth. I miss Rick and Gary and the guys downstairs. Everybody. I miss Larry Herms and Jamie Ramsey and walking around seeing everybody around the ballpark. But I'm happy. Things are good.
I feel like I can speak for everybody that you just named and say we miss you too.
Yeah.
You're looking.
They'd probably let you in if you make your way down here. I don't think anybody's going to keep you out. So the door is always open for you to come back and visit. You got a couple of months.
Who knows? I may head to New York when the guys come in.
There you go.
This week and see them. In New York. We'll see.
And I can't tell completely. Is that an SC warm up top?
Yes, it is. LSU this week.
Am I supposed to say fight on?
That's it. Yeah,
All right.
got football's one thing, and we're reconstructing the baseball program too. Going to get a new ballpark, and now we're moving to the Big Ten. As you guys know, it's a whole new world. So it'll be fun.
All right. Well, there is some baseball structure to our little show here, Georgie. So we're going to start with what we call the leadoff spot, and this is going to be Reds topics in the leadoff spot. George Grande, starting second baseman, and in the leadoff spot today. From your perch there in Connecticut, what has been the view of the 2024 Reds this season? What's your big picture take on this group?
Oh, I'm probably the same place you guys were. I was very optimistic after last year and the off season. And for the first time in a few years, we had a pretty good April. April's been horrible, and then May went south on us instead of May being good for us. But the young talent, and you guys talk about it all the time. There's some exciting young talent, but Sam, you've been in the clubhouse, and you've been there, and I still talk to Bob on a regular basis, and talk to David, and certainly Barry too. But I think there are things you still need. I mentioned to Bob. He said, "What do you think of our club?" I said, "It's a great club. It's coming together, but In my mind, you need leadership in 4 different categories. You need an on-field leader, you need a starting pitching leader, you need a bullpen leader, and if you don't have one that encompasses that starting leader, you need a Spanish leader too, a Spanish-speaking leader. And I think if we had added, a veteran pitcher to help those young guys develop um, as starters, I think we would have grown. I hated to lose Farmer, and over the years we've had some great leadership on the field, the Scott Rowland types. You were in that clubhouse, Sam. You know what it's like, and you in the bullpen. You need somebody like you in the bullpen to help you. And not that we don't have leaders, we've got some guys that are there, but sometimes injuries take you out of the starting rotation or take you out. The guys who could have been leaders this year have been off and on. I'll tell you a brief story. Last year, I went up to see the guys in Boston, and Justin Turner was playing with the Red Sox then. And JT, of course, was with us in the minor leagues.
Yep.
Teammate of Sam's, right?
Roommate of mine. We shared
their best. You knew then he was going to be an impact player.
Yeah.
So we got together, and he said, I love your club. You got a great club. But you know what's going to happen? They're going to hit the wall at some point in time, all these young players during the year. And you don't have that leadership quotient. You don't have that veteran guy that can help them get through it. Now, that could come in April, could come in May. For us, it came in May. And then again, last month, it came again. Those are the guys that can help you over the hump. The Sam LeCures in the bullpen. Scott Sullivan back in the old days, Johnny Franco, Jeff Shaw, guys like that in the bullpen that brought people together. Roland, people like that in the lineup. Farmer, Larkin, guys like that. And it takes its toll if you don't have that when you need it, when things are really tough.
I would agree with that, and I thought they hoped that Frankie Montas or Jmar Candelario would kind of fill those roles, but both of those guys were struggling a lot, so it's hard. Yep. I feel like it's hard to lead sometimes when you're going through the struggles. You're not going to tell some kid how to do this when you're getting your butt beat every 5 days or what, or if you're hitting 136 going into May or whatever the case may be. But just with this team, for me, George, it's been consistency. And I think that you're going to find that with young teams who don't have maybe some of that leadership to help them through the peaks and valleys of 162 games. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Freddie Benavides has done a great job with Elly at short. He's one of the best infield coaches I've ever been around. And losing McLean hurt because you could have given Elly a day off here or there and move him to second. And McLean could have been in there for a few games, set things up a little bit, steady a little bit. And you look at a lot of Elly's errors, over 20 errors. Everybody talks a lot about it, but hey, Barry Larkin made a lot of errors when he first started too. You can mature from that.
Yeah.
If you don't make bad plays, you don't use your head. You don't steal when you're down by 4 runs. And you're right. Yeah, I got you. I did the same thing you did. I'm watching that. But those are things about maturity.
Let's build on that.
That doesn't. A manager and a coach can only do so much. It's got to be a teammate that steps in and says, "We don't do it this way. This is the way we do it." You did that in the bullpen. Right. Barry did that as an infielder and a leader on the club. And I think that's, managers and coaches set the tenor of a club, but teams are led by players. Players have to get into each other's faces, get into their comfort zone and say, look, this is the way we're doing it if we want to win. And I think those teams that do progress usually end up with people like that.
Right, you used the word maturation or maturing. So let's go there. This team had 2 All-Stars. And I think if you could have projected some of the great young players or great young talent this team has been looking at, it's probably not a surprise that the All-Stars are Hunter Greene and Elly De La Cruz. But reminding ourselves that this is the first full big league season for De La Cruz, what do you think of his unique skill set, and where do you see a ceiling? Because we talk about what he's done, and then we always come back to, but man, if you can believe it, it feels like there's more there. How would you paint the picture of Elly De La Cruz here in his first full season, in what he's learned and where he still has to go?
I think he's done tremendous, and he's a great young man. As you guys know, he's an electric personality. But that's where the leadership comes in. You got to play. You got to play games first. You can't do it by sitting in the minor leagues. You got to play at the major league level. And number two, you need somebody that's there every day to help you. And I think you could take away maybe 10 of Elly's errors. They were mental errors, bad relay throws, trying to make something up with his arm instead of with his feet. And, as Scott Rowland always said, you remember the videos that we did, that Chris did with Rowland, one of the best tutorials I've ever seen. It all Jerry West always told me a good shot starts with your feet. A good shortstop, whether you're Barry Larkin or you're Rowland at third, starts with your feet. Get your feet in position. And if you look at some of the errors that he's made, it's been rushing, and not being prepared with the little things. And I think those things will come. There'll be maturity in that area. But you need somebody there every day that's going to be in his head, that's going to be taking ground balls during BP, that's going to talk a little bit about it, going to be sitting by the locker. I'm not worried about Elly. I'm a little not surprised, but I'm sad that O'Neill Cruz is being moved to center field by the Pirates. Give him some time. I think you're panicking a little bit. Remember, he lost all of last year. So, he's still coming back from injury. And I think O'Neill could be, I don't think O'Neill is Elly. I think Elly's better than O'Neill. But I think give him some time. And I think in Elly's case, I hopefully, Matt will be back next year, and I think that'll take some pressure off. But you're right, Geese. There's some great electricity, some great feeling. Steer and Friedel, two of my favorite guys. I love to watch them every night because they're ball players, and that's what we have. Give Nick Croft credit. He's gotten ball players in there, and you win with ball players. You don't win with numbers. You don't win with analytics. You win with people that have heart and head and want to be winners. And just to watch those guys every night is enjoyable.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is there a team, George, that you can think of, either for optimism or pessimism for this club that reminds you some of this Reds team?
99. Yeah. And I think the difference in 99 was we had the young guys, you had Boone and Casey and Pokey Reeves, all those guys coming up, Dimitri Young coming up little by little during that period. But, they brought in Vaughn. And when Vaughn came in, Barry Larkin was the leader of the team. And I remember Vaughn asked me, he says, "What do you think I should do?" And I said, just go in and talk to Lark. He went in and talked to Lark, and Lark said, "Look, you be yourself. You want to get on somebody, you get on them." So you had the good cop in Barry and the bad cop in Vaughn. And not only that, he brought video with him from Tony Gwynn. We had no video at all for hitters. He brought his own video hookup that he brought into the clubhouse. That was the start of where we are today with
Wait a minute.
Work the guys are doing.
Wait, just back up there. So Greg Vaughn brought like pre-produced Tony Gwynn video or just recorded game video and pointed things out? What are you talking about?
Both.
Okay.
He brought some of Tony's stuff, and Tony used to do it, in his hotel room. That's how he started. I still got a 7-minute piece I did with Tony in 1984 when he first started all that. It was remarkable, but he taught Vaughn. Vaughn brought that in, and Vaughn brought it in. He brought a little rinky-dink VCR set up and put it in the middle of the clubhouse. Everything we did to that point was on film. So nobody ever looked at it, but he brought it in. And guys, he didn't say, "Do this." He said, "Watch me." And he'd sit there and watch it. And little by little, he went over different things with different players. And he wasn't afraid to get in your face. He wasn't afraid to look at you and say, "That's stupid." And what are you doing on an 0-2 pitch? Or what are you doing on a 2-0 pitch? And he'd show video. Now, they got their laptops and everything. It's unbelievable, the information that's available there. But it's all about getting that up here. How do you simplify it? And a hitter can simplify that to another hitter. And I think that was a big turning point. So you had veteran leadership and the electricity of young guys. Aaron Boone tells me, he said, it was so great to be there at that time, but it was great because we knew we were coming, but we didn't know how to get there. But Larkin and Vaughn and those guys taught him how to get there.
Wow.
That's a crazy story. I didn't know that about the Greg Vaughn deal. That's cool. So just to piggyback on that a little bit, would you think that with this, you think they added another guy for going into next year. Like, they have the young guys. They don't know how to get there. They bring in a veteran type of guy this offseason that hopefully gets them over the hill.
Yeah, I think that was the plan you mentioned with Frankie Montas.
Yeah.
And Frankie's he's a great young man. He's a hard worker, a good person. But you need a step up from there as a leader. And I think last year there were 5 or 6 guys that you could have brought in to do that.
If they would have brought in Justin Turner, I mean, I would have loved that.
Exactly. And the other part of it is you need a position player, you need a starting pitcher, and you need a guy in the bullpen. I think the bullpen is come together pretty good, all things considered. But the other side of it is, I think you need to understand for each of these guys along the road that you can't do it from the bench, you can't do it from the DL. You got to do it on the field. You got to do it day to day and be prepared to be in somebody's face. And I think, hopefully they can add somebody this offseason to do that. I think that's important. And, the ability's there. And the other part of it, Sam, you only have 2 or 3 years to do that. With young guys, whether you're Hunter Green or Elly De La Cruz, after a while, you think, I'm here. I know how to be a major leaguer, even though you don't know.
Yeah.
And you begin to think, I know everything. And unless you have a Larkin or a Roland or a LeCure or a Jeff Shaw or a Scott Sullivan or Johnny Franco, somebody like that in the bullpen, then you're not going to get there. And the danger is you lose that opportunity.
Yeah.
After 2 or 3 years, people think they belong, and they're not going to listen. So I think it's a fleeting moment, and you got to grab it while you can.
All right, let's go from that conversation about this team to a quick conversation about the face of the franchise for a generation of Reds players, and that's Joey Votto, who, in true Joey Votto fashion, George, announced his retirement, with a couple of words. And in front of a AAA ballpark, and then makes his way in time to get to Toronto to see some of his former teammates right before they leave town and get on the plane and go to Pittsburgh. All of that said, you've been associated with and known so many great players over the years. If you were trying to give some perspective or some context on Votto as a player and Votto and what he accomplished to maybe someone that didn't see his career or didn't watch him play for 17 seasons, how would you put his career and his accomplishments in a nice little tidy box, or can you, in describing him to someone?
Well, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And for me, I kind of gravitate to off-field stuff rather than on-field stuff. The on-field stuff, the numbers and everything tell a story. But, it's ironic that all this came down in Toronto, because the 3 moments I remember most about Joey, after his dad passed away and he had the emotional difficulties, he went on the disabled list and came back in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And, he was working his way back. We go to Toronto. Nobody knew he was going to be there. And we get word that he's going to come back. He didn't want to do an interview to come back. And finally, we met in the clubhouse, hugged, cried a little bit. He came out, smile on his face, turned the page, and came back to be the player that he became at that point in time. It showed a lot about his character, showed a lot about his makeup internally. And in fact, I talked to Leon Roberts this week when Joey announced his retirement. I'll never forget when Joey was down in Chattanooga and Leon was down there. He was a roving hitting instructor. I was going through to do a thing for USA Baseball back then. And I go there and I look out on the field. Here's Joey at 10 o'clock in the morning taking extra BP with his dad out in center field flagging down the fly balls, his mom and his siblings behind the batting cage. Joey wanted them to be a part of it. This is before his dad passed away, and he wanted his dad to feel like he was a part of what he was going through. And he paid for the extra guy to come in and throw BP. He paid for the ballpark to open. And Leon came in. Leon was a great mentor for him, and still is. In fact, nobody knows the story, but after he became an MVP and he was all successful, he went out and bought Leon a friggin' truck, for crying out loud, and he deserved it, but that's Joey. So and I remember when he signed his big contract, he came to me. He said, "Would you come in the clubhouse before the news conference?" And he said, "These are the things I want to say." He said, "I want to tell the Reds fans that we're going to win the World Series. We're going to win championships." And I said, "Joey, so you can't guarantee that. All you can guarantee is that you're going to give everything you have to get to that point." And he looked. He says, "You're right," like that. and he was so intent on talking to the Reds fans at that point in time.
Right.
He came so far, as you Gies. First 7 years he was with the Reds. At every September, I did an interview with Joey and Jay Bruce from the first year they signed all the way through the minor leagues to the major leagues. Every year we sat down in September, and you saw the young players, and the two of them were best friends. Jay was the guy who was, he could handle pressure. It didn't bother him. Joey was the guy who was driven, and they played off each other. Some of Joey helped Jay. Some of Jay helped Joey. And to watch them mature and grow, and I think who they were and what they were, and Jay is still one of my all-time favorite Reds, because of the person he was, not what he did on the field. And, you guys saw him, you guys know him, and I'm sure you feel the same way. But to watch how Joey matured, not on the field, yes, on the field too, but off the field, and what he did, and nobody knew, he tore that left shoulder on a play on first base, and he tore his shoulder, he tore his elbow, and it wasn't for 5 years that he finally went back and had the operation. So it wasn't a 1 year or a one incident thing. He tried to fight through that, tried to change his swing. That's why we saw these little swings like that, because of that shoulder. It was torn 5 years before he ever got it operated on. He never said boo, never said that to anybody. And people sat and watched him and said, "What the heck is the matter with Joey?" He's a special guy. He was mercurial in some respects, and he grew up mature so much on the field and off the field too. And I look forward to whatever he's going to do next.
No doubt. No doubt. Sammy, let's do Five and Dive. Let's introduce George Grande to a segment, George, we call Five and Dive. Okay.
I don't know. Can we just sit here and listen to George tell some more stories? Because I feel like I want a beanbag. I want to sit on the floor and look up. And I love it, George. This is great, man. I love this. Yes, Five and Dive.
It is. Yes, it is excellent. We can do that, and that just means that we have to have George back another time. But Five and Dive, George, is 5 questions. It's not rapid fire, but we're going to do, one hand. That's all you need is fingers on one hand. And it'll be a pretty direct question. You can give, your answer, and then we'll maybe
yes or no. Is it multiple choice? Like when I took college boards, I guess.
Don't pick C. Don't pick C because you won't have that option. All right, but here we go. Five and Dive. Number 1, what player to you is the best story in baseball this season?
Woo!
George Grande.
In any year, you could say Ohtani, because he's such a unique player. I've never seen anybody like him. I grew up with Mantle, and Willie Mays was my guy, and they were the best. But Ohtani, he's like Judge, bigger, stronger, faster, and still what Mantle and Mays were way back then. And I know that I'm still close to people in the Dodger organization. And when you look at what he went through before the season ever started, for some people that could have ruined their career, not just the season. And he's been able to slough that off and still do what you expect him to do. There are a number of guys. I can look at guys on our club, what Friedel's done with Brett Butler helping him. That's exciting. What Steer's done, what he does every night, that's exciting. But I think Ohtani is so unique, and I've known Judge, Dave Miley, our former manager and former minor league coordinator, really mentored Aaron Judge when he was his AAA manager for the Yankees.
Yeah.
And Judge still treasures his relationship with Dave Miley. He introduced me to Judge back then when I was doing the AAA World Series, and the kid has not changed. The kid is really special. Not just, he's taken over the leadership that Derek Jeter had, but he's also continued. And what he's doing this year is pretty remarkable on a team that's struggled. Booney's had his ups and downs with that club this year, but it's hard not to point to Ohtani as not for what he's doing on the field. You expected that, but we all know how off-field situations can affect somebody. The way he's handled that and the way he's been able to continue to perpetuate his greatness is pretty impressive to me.
He handled it in a way that I think that I hadn't thought about it until you brought it up. He handled it head on, and then boom, see ya. But yeah, he's pretty spectacular, and then next year he's going to win a Cy Young. My question I have here that was help. I got some help with is most memorable game or moment you called.
I always like to say the next game.
Oh.
No, when your debut. In fact, I texted you last month when Richardson came up. I said, "Son of a gun, Richardson looks like you when you first came up. His demeanor on the mound, and he didn't last very long."
No.
But
May 28th, 2010, George Grande's most memorable moment he called. Here comes Sudden Sam to the mound.
It's all good. It's all good. There's so many, but I tell you, we talked about 99. I'll never forget. We go to Milwaukee. We got to win 1 out of 3 games to clinch the division, to clinch a postseason playoff spot. And we lose Friday. We lose Saturday. Sunday, it rains, and we have a 4-hour rain delay. The game didn't end until late at night in Milwaukee time. And if we win, then we have a playoff game on Monday against the Mets. And not a ticket has been sold. John Allen and his front office people didn't have a ticket sold because nobody knew there was going to be a game. So we go into everybody, it's muddy, it's mucky. Dimitri pulls his hamstring. We were going to pitch Harnish Pete on the first day of the playoffs, but now we had to use him on Sunday because we needed to win that game. So not a ticket had been sold. We go to the ballpark. It's a complete sellout on Monday. The place is crazy. I mean, you go back to the Big Red Machine era, it was amazing. It was crazy all the time. But to go from where we were on Sunday to Monday and to look around and everybody looks up like this. John Allen looked up, as if to say, how did we do this? It was amazing. And the feeling in that ballpark, the feeling around town was so special because that was such a special team. I mean, like we talked about, they overachieved. The veteran guys combined with the young guys. It was, and I still thought, Sean Casey will say it, Aaron Boone will say it. Yes, they made it to the playoffs later on, made it to Casey with another team, makes it to the World Series. But that was a magical year for them and for me too.
That was the team. Those guys talk about that all the time.
Yep.
For 30 plus years, you stood on the stage as the MC of the induction ceremonies in Cooperstown Hall of Fame weekend. And I know you had so many, there were moving speeches and great moments where players got to express things to the other Hall of Famers or to their families. I know you have all of that. But Hall of Fame weekend is also, before you get to the stage. It's out there by the water behind the hotel. It's at the bar. What is a memorable, or when you think about it, a memorable moment not seen by the public on the stage that you had with some of those great ball players over the course of those 30 plus years? Give me something that stands out to you above the other interactions that you've had.
Every year was special. Every moment was special. And most of them surrounded the families of the inductees. Like you knew the players, some of them. I mean, I didn't, I wasn't broadcasting when Joe DiMaggio got in, but I got to know Joe. I got to know Willie Mays. I got to know, guys like that. But their families, all of a sudden, somebody, a wife, kids were in a position where they were basking in the glory just like the player was. So getting to know all those families, and I'm still so close with so many of them. We exchange Christmas cards, we talk during the year. Um, it's a special feeling to watch them, and sitting in the front row with the inductee up here giving a speech, and I look down and here's Barry Larkin. I'm looking at his mom and dad sitting down there, or you're looking at you know Al Kaline's mother and father are down there, and his father's crying and his mother's crying, and there were those are the moments that stick out the most for me, because it showed how much, and a lot of the speeches have gone there. Ozzie Smith saying, you know, it's not okay if you're good. You got to be better, and better isn't good if you can be the best. It's Al Kaline talking about him growing up. It's Scott Rowland. I mean, Scott Rowland. You saw his speech, talking about what his dad told him when when he was struggling. He says, "Not what you can't do, it's what you can do." And you go through every one of those, and they're pretty special. So, for me, the enjoyable time, if I think back of one moment, it was Sparky's last visit there. We have a dinner on Friday night that's informal, and it's under a big tent. It's outside. It's not, nobody's dressed up. And Sparky came in. Dan Ewald, you remember him? He was the PR director for the Tigers, and he was Sparky's guy for many years after he retired. Dan was supposed to come up with Sparky. He couldn't come. So Sparky came up. He said, "Would you watch over Sparky for me?" And I knew Sparky. I met him when I was at USC. He was best friends with Rod Dato, my coach. So Sparky's staying at the Otasaga, like you mentioned, Geese, and he had 2 hearing aids. He takes a shower, and he forgot to take his hearing aids out, so he couldn't hear a thing. So he says to me, he says, "Georgie," he says, "you're going to sit next to me, and you're going to bring people over to me and make sure they come right up to me and they talk loud." So I'm sitting at the party, and he said, "Who's that over there? Is that Tony? Bring Tony over. Who's that over there? Is that Musial?" He goes down the list. And at the other side of me is Johnny Bench. And Johnny was like his son. Johnny and Sparky had a relationship that, was beyond belief, and Sparky always looked at him and his son, and Johnny would look up at him. And I looked over, and I think we all knew this was Sparky's last time there. He probably weighed about 130 pounds at that point in time, but he sat there all night, brought one person after another there. And he'd talk to him. He said, "I remember you did this. I remember that." And they'd hug and whatever, and they'd leave. And then I'd bring somebody else over. And I looked over to the side, and here's Johnny. And there are tears coming down Johnny's eyes, because I think he knew, and we both knew at that point in time, that it might have been Sparky's last time. So George was a special person, and a wonderful guy. And a great Red, certainly, but even more importantly that he touched so many lives, and he sure touched my life too.
Great story. All right, we're 3 questions deep. We got 2 more. Sam, go.
So I'm going to use the year 1999 since we've talked about it a couple times. So for you, the style of baseball, the year 1999 or the year 2024?
1999.
I figured I was going to get a short answer on that one.
That's the shortest answer George has given all day.
But now I'll say this, I'm not against analytics. I'm against the place that analytics is at in our game today. In my mind, the game is the meat and potatoes. Analytics should be the salt and pepper that you put on top of it. Instead, we flip that, and analytics are the meat and potatoes, and your heart, your soul,
intangibles,
what you are. What? Pardon?
Intangibles.
Yeah, those are the things that make that makes Elly de la Cruz a star, and not just a guy who makes 25 errors. And I'll bring up this one story. I did the AAA World Series for 11 years with Jim Cott. We did the game every year. It was an enjoyable broadcast with him. I mean, doing the games with Chris for me was like being home every night. He was my brother, and I'll cherish those moments forever. But I enjoyed the games I did with Kitty, and I did when we first started. Brett Butler was a manager in the Arizona organization, and we had Billy Hamilton coming up in the minor leagues. And I said, I talked to Brett. He says, "Boy, I like this kid Hamilton. He's pretty good." I said, yeah, I said, the kid could only learn how to bunt. And he said, well, I said, would you tutor him in the off season? He said, I'll do it for nothing. He said, because if this kid can learn how to drop a bunt down and pull it, you remember Brett Butler,
Yeah.
he hit 285, 280 for his career. He got 30 hits a year that were bunt hits, or else he would have been a 240, 250 hitter.
Right.
And he could have done that with Billy Hamilton. And
Yeah.
I went to the Reds and said, look, Brett Butler's willing to do this for nothing. He just sent him to him for a week. And now TJ's being able to work with him. And
Yeah.
you see what he did.
Yeah.
Hopper, Norris Hopper, when Hoppy dropped that bunt down, I think if we could have been to that point and take analytics and throw them out, it's about how do you get to somebody? You could say you got to bunt more because you'll hit better and whatever. No, you got to sit there and how do you do it? How do you approach it? And Brett's done that with TJ. He could have done that with Billy Hamilton. Billy's career would have been completely different, I Bleav. So I'm not an analytics fan, but I understand the value of it. I understand the
It has its place, but it's behind baseball.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about it. Warren Spahn told me, he said, Whitey Ford told me, he said, if I was being scouted today, nobody ever signed me. Greg Maddux, nobody ever signed him. Randy Jones, and nobody ever signed him. All these guys who threw 85, 88, but and are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
So the game is, yes, they're bigger, stronger, faster. The ability for them to analyze the game is much greater today. But I'm not saying the game is better today.
Right. Okay, hang on. I'm still making a note here that this is consecutive shows with a Norris Hopper mention.
Yep.
Just want to make sure we remember that Norris Hopper.
Last time talking about Joey.
Was Hoppy great? Hoppy was great.
And I've got a definite soft spot for Norris Hopper, and which we hated to lose him, but in return for Norris Hopper, I received Corky Miller.
That's not bad. And he's the best. He's the best.
One of the great
trades
in the history and the annals of baseball. All right, George.
I told him years ago, you're going to be a major league manager someday.
You told Corky?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He should be.
He should
be. Should be. All right, we wrap up 5 and Dive with this, and this is just my random question as I'm going back and looking at video. Question number 5 and 5 and Dive is, what were you really thinking in 1979 when you sat there and did that first SportsCenter? I mean, right. How old were you?
28. I left CBS to go up there.
Yeah.
And my boss at CBS said, "You want to go where?" The ES what? He said, "Well, look, you go ahead. I'll let you out your contract. And when the thing falls on its face, you can come back. I'll give you a job again." But I did the show with Lee Leonard.
Right.
Who was a New York broadcaster, and he knew Chet and Scotty from his days at NBC. And Lee called me up. He said, "You're doing this show." He said, "What do you think?" I said, "Lee, it's going to be fun." So I picked Lee up, driving from New York to Connecticut. And we're driving up to the building, and there's no glass on the windows. There's one satellite dish, and there's no the parking lot's not paved. It's muddy. We're walking in, and Lee looks at me. He says, "What the did you get me involved in?" So we go in to do the first show. We're supposed to have Bear Bryant, Switzer. We had the president of the NCAA. We had 3 live shots. We lost 2 of the live shots 15 minutes before the show. And the producer in my ear says, "We lost our last live shot." I said, "I don't know what's going to happen. I'm getting out of the truck." He bailed. So he looked at me. We had 10 minutes to fill. And I looked at Lee, and Lee looked at me. He said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Because we're doing college football. We did 5 games a weekend. We played them." I said, "You in favor of college playoff?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "I am too." He said, "We flipped a coin to decide who would be against it and who'd be in favor of it." So he got to be in favor of it. I had to be against it. I had to make up something. So we filled that up, but it was miraculous. We had not the first night, but the second night, we only had one studio, and there's an open door. The cables are coming in because the control room wasn't working. It came out of a remote truck.
Yeah.
But the door was open, and we had a little restaurant up the street where everybody get food and throw it in the trash can. We're getting ready to do the show, and I look over, and here comes a skunk walking from the woods into the studio to go through the trash. And the girl who's the camera operator, Mary Walton, is sitting there like this, and her eyes are popping out of her head. I said, Mary, don't move. He came in, he ate, and he left. So he was probably the first viewer we had.
So in one thing, you not only changed the course of television with SportsCenter, but you also, with Lee, because of your debate, invented that whole genre of debate TV.
You're right.
Which has permeated television in every way. And so we end the show the same way we started it, with our original SportsCenter anchor from 1979, George Grande. And George, I didn't say it off the top, you look fantastic. I mean, you look exactly the way you did when you were coming to the ballpark every day.
Can't stop the clock, guys, but hopefully we don't change in here. And you guys keep up the great work. It's great to watch you every night. And, you know, we've all been there. It's a roller coaster year. You know, things are going good, things are going bad. But you guys keep the faith. You guys work hard, and you bring information every night. I know you work hard. You know, Dream and Rufus and Ziggy and all the guys, Rob, all the guys who work so hard on that show. It's a joy to watch it every night. It really is. Keep up the great work.
Love you, George.
Where's the money you said you'd give me if I said that?
You got to check in with Rufus for that. George, we'll do it again. We'll do it again sometime, man. All the best. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you, George.